welcome to the Rowing Chat Olympic Preview, where we review the qualified crews country by country. Today, I'm delighted to announce that my guest is Sarah Cook from Australia. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
It's very, very good to have you here. I'm astonished that I haven't invited you on the show before, so I'll fix that. Now, let's start by kicking off. Australia has done a cracking job of qualifying, particularly sweep crews. You've got every single women's sweep crew qualified, and the same with the men. Wow.
Yeah, it's funny how things go in cycles. I think, you know, there's been times where Australia has been extremely strong in the sculling. Of course, Kim Brennan winning the women's single scull back in 2016. The men's double in 2008 with David Crawshay and Scott Brennan, her husband. So we have certainly had a strong history in sculling, but as you say, not many sculling boats qualified for these games.
Let's kick off by running through the women's crews. The first one I'd like to talk about in the sculling side is the women's double.
Yes, so the women's double, Amanda Bateman and Tara Rigney. They're a new combination, so they didn't race at the Amanda raced in the 2019 World Championships, but Tara has come out of under 23s and has really just been an outstanding performer. She's really come onto the scene here domestically this year in the sculling. So it's really exciting to see her trajectory. She's from my club, which is Sydney University Boat Club. So it's fantastic to see the work that our coaching team has done with her there to get her into the National Training Centre and now onto her first Olympic team.
This is definitely a common theme in these talks, is that the extra year has been either massively advantageous for a young athlete coming through or terribly hard for an older athlete holding on.
Yes.
Who's in the women's quad?
So the women's quad is Rhea Thompson, Rowena Meredith, Harriet Hudson and Caitlin Cronin. And they actually went through the final Olympic qualification regatta, which was a huge undertaking for the Australian and New Zealand crews, as well as I know the Canadian and US crews that came over as well. Particularly for Australia and New Zealand, we have very strict quarantine protocols coming back into the country. So that was very tightly managed, that whole trip, as it was for the Paralympic team as well, that followed to the Paralympic qualifiers a couple of weeks later. And that crew, we sent 3 crews over. The men's double and the lightweight men's double were unfortunately not successful in qualifying for the games, but the women's quad were, and they had a fantastic row at FOQR. And I was able to commentate that for World Rowing, which was really exciting because they're some young, talented girls who've been in the pipeline for a little while now. But it's great to see them debuting, all 4 of them, at their first Olympic Games.
Very exciting times. Now let's move on to the sweep. Let's go small boats to big boats. Women's pair.
Yes, so I've known for some time what was going to happen here, or one of the scenarios that was going to play out in terms of doubling up. So I think the Kiwis are doubling up their women's pair, which won the World Championship in 2019, into their women's 8. And our Australian women's pair, Jessica Morrison and Annabelle McIntyre, were actually doubling up into the women's 4. So it's going to be really interesting. But both the women's 4, which to round out that crew and sort of skipping ahead to the next one, is Rosie Popper and Lucy Stefan. And so Lucy Stefan has really been a consistent member of that women's 4 that's won the recent World Championships and has been so successful since the boat came in Sarasota back in 2017. So she's kind of been the only stayer now through to the Olympics, and we've brought that top pair in of Jess and Annabelle. And then Rosie Popper has been in the women's 8, and she's now moved into the women's 4. And both of her parents are Olympic bronze medalists from the 80s. So Rosie comes from a long line of Olympic rowers and Olympic success.
I must say, it would be very sweet indeed to see the first newly reintroduced women's 4 medals go to such a diligent crew, and obviously putting the top, I take it the pair is the top sweep boat.
They have been extremely fast, but so has our four. It's been remarkable to see them in I guess we've had simulation World Cup regattas down here in Australia at the same time that the World Rowing Cups have been running, and they've been consistently our top prognostic crews and going blindingly fast. So I'm going to put it out there and say I think that our pair and our four for the women are very, very strong contenders for the gold medals. They'll, of course, have some stiff competition, but I think that they're going incredibly well.
And let's round off the women by talking the 8.
Yeah, so the women's 8, obviously it was fantastic to see Australia and New Zealand. You know, we have this love-hate relationship with New Zealand, but really it's sort of like us all down under against the world. And so it was so fantastic to see, you know, that New Zealand Women's 8 project and knowing how many years that had been going for. And then the same with the Australian Women's 8 taking first and second in 2019 at the World Championships and relegating the US. So I think that they're probably going to be vying for the podium, those 3 crews come the games. But I really think we have an incredibly strong women's 8. We see Sarah Hoare and Katrina Werry, who are world champions, going into that, and Molly Goodman as well, going into that women's 8. Olympia Aldersey, who competed in Rio in 2016, as well as Georgie Rowe, our big erg puller, and by James Rook, who's the first man to cox an Australian Women's 8. So it's a really special crew, and I think that they're going to have a good games.
That is going to be awesome, that finals race. Yeah. Now, let's shift on to the men. We've got a men's quad qualified in 2019 at Linz. How are they looking?
Yeah, so this quad, Jack Cleary, Caleb Antill, Cam Girdleston and Luke Letcher. Cam Girdleston won a silver medal at the Rio Olympics in the men's quad, and he's made it quite clear that he's here for one reason and one reason only, and that's to go one better here in Tokyo after the silver in Rio. So Cam's, I guess, the experience in that boat with the other 3 debuting at their first Olympic Games. But this is another crew that's been doing incredibly well in our domestic competitions, achieving some really great prognostics. It's a crew that's just clicked. So despite there being 3 debutantes in there, they've found some incredible speed. And I think they're going to be a really exciting crew to watch, and maybe one that's been a little bit off the radar, although, of course, Australia won a silver medal back in 2018 in Plovdiv in the men's quad. So we have had some sort of flashes of brilliance in the men's sculling side in recent years, but this crew has been very, very consistent, and I think could be a chance for a medal.
Great stuff. Moving on now to the sweep boats from the men's side, small to large. Start with the pair.
Yeah, so we'll start with the men's pair, Sam Hardy and Josh Hicks. So this was the pair that won the bronze medal at the 2019 World Championships, qualifying the boat there. They're both debutantes, but you know, Josh Hicks, he was in the bow of the men's 4 that won the World Championship in 2017 and 2018, and so he's medalled at the last 3 World Championships. And he's sort of, I think, known as a big race performer. You know, he really handles that pressure well. So I think that Hardy and Hicks, I would definitely be thinking are a great chance for a medal in that men's pair event. The men's 4 is Alex Purnell, Spencer Tarrant, Jack Hargraves and Alex Hill. So we've got 3 members from that men's 4 that won in 2017 and 2018. Yeah. That's Tarrant, Hargraves and Hill, with Alex Purnell as the new member to that boat. So Alex, his older brother Nick, is rowing in the men's 8. I think they're the first brothers to row for Australia in 20 odd years or something like that. So that's a really lovely story as well, that those 2 brothers will be competing together in Tokyo. But I think that the men's 4 obviously was a bit of a shock in 2019, I think, coming 6th in the final after winning the 2 previous World Championships. But my understanding is that they're going really well, have found their stride and found their speed again. And, you know, I think that they would be back to previous form would be my view on them.
Fantastic. And now the big boat last.
Yes, so the men's 8, a really interesting crew. So we've got in the bow 4, I'll split it into bow 4 and stern 4. In the bow 4, we have Nick Lavery, Angus Widdicombe, Angus Dawson and Simon Keenan. They're all debutants for the Olympics. And so pretty young Nick Lavery, 22, Angus Dawson, only 20 years of age. So some really young, talented guys in that boat who we know will come back for the next cycle. And then in the stern of the boat, you've got your more experienced guys. Nick Purnell at 31 years of age, his second Olympics. He competed in 2012. Tim Masters at 29. This is his first games, but he has studied over in the US and been rowing for many years. Josh Booth, he's our only 3-time Olympian on the team. So he, of course, won silver in the men's 4 in Rio. And then Jack O'Brien, young Jack O'Brien, who I actually coached at school and onto his first Australian team in 2016. So it's really lovely to see him stroking the men's 8, 23 years of age, and his first Olympic Games with Stuart Sim as the men's 8 coxswain, also a debutant.
Well, what a great lineup, Sarah. That is brilliant. Thank you for a fantastic run through. Obviously, we wish everyone all the best, but I did want to ask you something. You mentioned that you'd done mirror World Cup regattas as simulations. What effect do you think it will have on the crews that have not actually gone out, as it were, in anger to race overseas this year? How will it affect them?
Yeah, look, it's a really hard call because I guess there's 2 ways you can look at it. You know, we know that we have some fast crews that have incredible results over the past cycle. So on one hand, I guess that unknown quantity for our competitors, not knowing where our crews are at, is an advantage. But then, of course, not having been sort of a bit battle hardened for the last couple of years by coming to regattas, going through those processes, feeling the nerves, which is, it's always going to be different being at an international event and on an international start line to what it is on a start line in your own backyard when you're racing other Aussie crews. So I think there's 2 ways to look at it, but certainly the speeds that our crews have been showing, I think, has given our athletes a lot of confidence. And I'm really confident that despite there being a large number of debutants on the team, that there's enough experience that hopefully they're able to stay really focused and just get in and get the job done come games time.
Well, like you, I'm going to be glued to the screens and watching from afar. Sarah, thank you. It's been a delight having you here on Rowing Chat, and thank you for giving us such a great preview.
Thanks, Rebecca. Looking forward to the Olympics.
Aren't we all? So stay tuned, everybody, as we run through more countries' Olympic previews in the coming days as we lead up to the start of the Olympic regatta.